So many business owners struggle to get the results they want from their business, and as a result, they struggle to enjoy their lives. They work hard, yet they see very little change in their results week after week, month after month, and even year after year. Now, tune into this episode where we talk through a key mistake that virtually all business owners are making to a greater or lesser extent that actually causes much of this frustration and lack of progress. You wouldn't play a game without keeping the score. Like, what is the point?
But often the same problems are coming up again and again.
We're not really sure why. Hey, what happened? Like, it was going good. What's changed?
Cash flow issues, team struggles, lack of profit, all these things just rear their ugly head time and time again.
Basically, your business is not going to be very healthy in the long term, or if it is, you're not really sure why.
Well, its life expectancy is definitely going to go down.
In that cycle of learning, growing, and improving, you get really excited.
Let's dive into this. Where do we start?
Alrighty, welcome to the podcast. Tony Fraser-Jones here, your host, with my good mate Phil Smith, kicking it off again, buddy.
G'day, mate. G'day.
What are we into today?
Well, we're talking about how most people have a constant stream of busyness to deal with in their lives. So, projects, jobs, prices, suppliers, team issues, it's all mounting up. And, problems come up and we work really hard to solve them, but often the same problems are coming up again and again. So, cash flow issues, team struggles, lack of profit, all these things just rear their ugly head time and time again.
Yeah, or sometimes things go well as well, and we have a good run, and then things go south, and we're not really sure why. It's like, hey, what happened? Like, it was going good. What's changed? The thing that we're going to dig into today is to understand this principle of feedback loops, because it actually sits underneath helping us get the progress we want. And really, feedback loops are a very simple concept. It's basically reviewing your results and then adjusting accordingly, and then reviewing them again. And adjusting accordingly, and again and again and again. And so it's a process. And I guess the key thing here is, if you are playing sport, I know if I've been playing sport, and I know you're the same, you wouldn't play a game without keeping the score. Like,
oh, no way.
What is the point? Even if it's like backyard sport or with some mates, there's always a score. That's, part of the fun. We can rag each other on who won or lost or whatever it is. So we do it even in sports for fun. We definitely do it in competitive sports. So why wouldn't we do it in business? Because it actually tells us, how we're tracking, and that's probably a key part of it. And then we can look to improve based on the results we get.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure you got a story to kick us off.
I do have a story. It's kind of a personal one. I have 4 kids, and one of my kids is a type 1 diabetic. And if you don't know what that is, it's a quite a challenging illness. Pancreas doesn't make insulin. People need insulin to stay alive and use the glucose in their blood. If they don't have it, they die. And it requires him to be given insulin and to monitor the blood sugars in his blood. Those of us who don't have it, our blood sugars will stay nice and steady. Those who have diabetes, they're all over the show. And it's really important that those blood sugars are in a healthy range, because long term, if they're not, it can cause a bunch of health problems, complications associated with diabetes. And so luckily we have this medical technologies now, but 100 years ago we didn't even have insulin. And then they got insulin, and it was very hard to test blood sugars. You couldn't do it, really. It was just a bit of hope and guessing, and it developed a little bit more. People would pee in a bottle, and it would get sort of tested every week, and they'd get some feedback, days and days afterwards about where their blood sugars sat. And in those situations, it's actually quite hard with people for diabetes to manage their sugars, and there were a lot more complications, and frankly, their life expectancy was less because of this. But fast forward today, we're really lucky. We have incredible technology. So my son has a continuous glucose monitor that measures his blood sugar levels all the time. And so we know exactly where he is, and he has an insulin pump that will give him some insulin to manage the blood sugars and keep them in a really tight range. And that's basically an ultimate feedback loop. We can test quickly and make adjustments really quickly. And so the life expectancy, the quality of life of type 1 diabetics who are well treated now is exceptionally good. They have great lives and not much different to anyone else, which is fantastic news. I'm really excited about that. But the same thing applies in your business or your life. You don't want to have a business that you're not getting feedback on, because basically your business is not going to be very healthy in the long term. Or if it is, you're not really sure why.
Well, its life expectancy is definitely going to go down, which is not helpful. So
no, not ideal.
Yeah, so these feedback loops are crucial, and if we don't have them, we do run into some issues.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is you just repeat the same mistakes. Like, you repeat the same mistakes over and over again, because you don't know what's causing it, and you don't grow and improve. Like, things get very static and stalled. You get frustrated. I think ultimately what happens is, without good feedback, you start to give up and lose motivation, because you don't really know what's going on. And that's a problem. And some people get pretty bitter and twisted, to be honest. And as you said, the life expectancy of their business becomes potentially quite short.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we do have feedback loops, we got a lot to gain.
Yeah, this is the key thing. You actually learn the lessons of what's going on in your business, so you can see what's happening and make adjustments. So you learn and grow. Your business improves. And I think when you're in that cycle of learning, growing, and improving, you get really excited and excited about where your business is going. You feel confident and empowered to actually grow the business and get the results you want. And life becomes more of a journey of growth and discovery, and you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
To be honest, not always easy, but at least it feels like it's a positive, proactive thing, which is all the difference, rather than wallowing in a sea of doubt and despair.
Yeah, well, you have a lot more control, and I think that's where the fun comes
That's
back.
the key thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into this. Where do we start?
Yep. I think the first thing is the feedback principle. So this is the whole guts of it. Really is you have to keep score, and so you have to measure what's happening in your business to see what's working and what's not working. So you'll measure something. You get some feedback, you see what the result is, you look at it, and they're going to tell you something about your business. And then you can make some changes. And then once you've made those changes, you just measure it again. So it's this cycle of testing, tweaking, testing, tweaking, testing. And you keep doing that until all symptoms of poverty disappear. That's the aim.
Yeah.
And so what it does is when you have this feedback loop, you can identify the areas of the business that need improvement, what the problem areas are, what the areas for opportunity are, make the changes, and then reap the benefits of those changes, test them again, and so that cycle just goes on. It's like constant and never-ending improvement. So that's really what a feedback loop is, and you can apply it in a bunch of areas in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we don't have that feedback loop, then honestly, like success and progress in your business is really just luck. And, I don't say that lightly. I mean, definitely there'll be some people listening today who've had some success, and that's cool, but they're not really sure why. And they'll put it down to, hard work. And I'm like, yeah, but on what? And, and for what reasons? And if you can't narrow down on that, then it is luck involved. You can be successful without feedback. It is possible, but you don't know why, and therefore you cannot replicate it, and you cannot make it consistent. And more importantly, you can't find the areas that could improve, and you can't improve them. So whether you're doing really well or really badly, those feedback loops are important, or otherwise you are just throwing caution to the wind and basically just gambling with your business success. Often, this situation, even if you're doing well at the start, it'll turn into failure eventually because you end up stopping doing the stuff that made you successful. There's that great saying. It's like, hey, that strategy worked so well that we stopped doing it. But the thing is, if you don't know why you're not doing so well, you can't improve it. But if you also don't know why you are doing well, you also can't keep doing that, replicate it, and even further iterate it for even better results. You're just really luck is all that's driving your business results, which is a dangerous place to be.
It is. And I think if you think about examples of how this works in a business, it really helps bed this down. So I can think of a number of our members, hundreds of them, but one in particular from early on who had a reasonable business, $2.5 to $3 million in revenue, bunch of team members running around, plumbing business, 2 partners. Like, they were busy and popular as well in their city, but they had massive cash flow problems. They owed the tax office a bunch of money because they just weren't making money. But there was no measurement of the profitability, and particularly the job profitability. They just weren't tracking how profitable the jobs that they had were. They were very busy. They had lots of jobs on. And they started measuring, we call it back costing, but it's basically measuring the profitability of each job. And they figured out that a couple of builders they worked with, the margins on those jobs were very low. They're around 18 to 20%, the gross margins on those jobs, which is a problem.
Yeah.
Because you want them to be definitely in the 30s, hopefully 35, maybe 40 even
plus,
higher, depending on the work. And so they measured that, and they're like, okay, well, there's some issues here. We figured out that actually there was a bunch of disorganization out in the field, lots of trips to these jobs, 18, 20, 25 trips to some of these simple house builds, disorganization with the contractor, the builder, disorganization at their end. So they tightened a lot of that up. They've got some quick QA processes, quality assurance processes in place, as well as tweaking some of their margins. So they've tested it. They've made some changes, some tweaks, and then they start testing it again. And what do we find? Those margins have changed to 30%, 32%, 35%. That's the feedback mechanism, the feedback loop in place. And now they consistently do that to maintain that or looking to improve it.
Yeah.
That's a feedback loop. It's very simple but very powerful. And without it, you don't improve, and there's just money going down the drain.
Well, another story, man, that kind of illustrates the other side of this, where things can be working, but it is luck. I remember a member a couple of years ago, and he started out with us. He wasn't a big business. It was him and about 4 guys in the field, one other lady in the office. And they had a great culture. And he was super proud of it. It was like literally the crown jewel of his business was this amazing team culture that he had. And he couldn't really put his finger on why the culture was so strong. He's just like, man, I just got these great people. And, his business grew. Obviously, that great culture led to, great sales. Customer relationships were awesome. They were doing a great job on site. Everything was going really well. And, this perpetuated growth. He got a bit bigger. Took on more guys, operations manager, more and more people in the field, and he ended up more in the office, and he was more focused on like business development, pricing, things like that. But the culture started to suffer in a big way, and he just couldn't put his finger on why. He's like, look, the culture's always been great. We do things the same way. We have the same core values. Everything feels the same, and I've still used my same process to hire great guys. I feel like everyone in the team's great, but just the culture's toxic, and things started going downhill. But he didn't know why his culture was good. And actually what we figured out when we started measuring and really digging into what he used to do with his team every day versus what's happening now, turned out that this guy used to go and he would actually take each team member out at least once per week off-site, have a coffee with them and have a big chat about their life, how things are going and what struggles they had outside of work, all this kind of stuff, and where they felt they were with their progress on on jobs, and give them some some wisdom and some coaching and stuff. And he would just do that. It was just something he did. But he never really made note of the fact he did it. He just thought it was the right thing to do. Team ended up growing. It was too many people to take care of. He ended up getting other management in place, and he wasn't having that face time with the guys, and those meetings stopped happening. Now, we teach a technique called the 20, which is basically that little meeting once a week with each team member. But at the time, he had just done that, never measured that he did it, never made note of it. And when he handed over management to other people, they didn't know to continue that custom. And so, things went down south. He implemented the 20 in the end, which is basically just, he had the feedback loop that when I did this, it worked, and when I stopped doing it, it doesn't work. New manager started doing it, culture came right back, and everything came right. So I think this can work in reverse as well.
It's massive, and the feedback loop here is the key. Is you want to have it in place, and you want the feedback loop to be as quick as possible. So as quick as possible, that's why we want to measure often, and it's the secret sauce to actually shortening the time between the effort you put in and the results you get, because not everything works perfectly all of the time, and everything needs some tweaking. And so feedback loops really help avoid so much pain and frustration through just letting repeated mistakes go on and on and on. And so that loop is powerful. You want to make it as short as possible loop, which means you do things quickly so you can get the learning and get the results more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. So, I think we should look at some of the areas that we should be creating feedback loops in. So, big ones that stand out for me, job profitability. It's super important that you have a feedback loop here. So we teach a concept called back costing, where we're looking at each job's profitability. We're trending the results of that across different work types and basically seeing where we sit in terms of the profitability of our jobs on a consistent basis. And that feedback loop is going to create the ability for you to see how jobs are going. If they're going badly, how can we improve them? Is it an efficiency problem, a pricing issue? What can we do to make that better? And if we are doing stuff really well on certain work types, how can we, take the principles of what's working in those and apply it to other areas of our business so that we can bring the profitability up, across the board for the work that we do. And that's obviously crucial to the health of your business. Another key feedback loop is, checking your profit and loss statement monthly. So, if you're looking at your profit and loss statement, your income statement, you need to be looking at that every single month and looking how you're tracking on a month-to-month basis. It's very important so you can keep control of not just your margins, but also, where are all your expenses going? Where are you blowing out? What are you spending on unnecessarily? Where are you underspending? What infrastructure is going to be required in order for you to actually, break past any ceilings of complexity? But all of this is right there in the numbers, and you need to be looking at that feedback loop. It's right there for you all the time. Setting business KPIs. Another massive one. In this case, once we know our numbers a bit and we know where we sit, we can set some targets for ourselves in terms of some of our key metrics as a feedback loop for whether or not we are making, the improvements we want to make. So it's fine to identify how you're tracking, but then you need to say, how do I want to be tracking? And then actually hold myself to that standard to see whether the improvements I'm making are actually working.
They can be done weekly, which is even more powerful. You speed up the loop, and it might be how much work have we priced this week, how much work have we won this week, how many leads have we got this week, where is our AR this week? All those loops are super, super powerful, and they can be quick with KPIs, weekly, which will then help lead into your monthly profit and loss.
Yeah, and for those listening, AR is accounts receivable. It's the amount of money that
the
people
money that's
owe you.
owed to you, baby.
It's what
You've got
people
to go
owe
get
you.
that money.
Yeah, make sure you get it. Team KPIs is another big one. So, setting some standards and some benchmarks, targets for things that your team can control to measure whether they're doing a great job day to day. And again, setting those feedback loops, those targets, and then measuring how they're going with their work is really important to get the feedback on whether or not they're performing, whether they need more training, whether they need to be inspired or motivated because maybe they're going off the boil, and often are really telling for what's going on in that person's personal life as well, because and you can spot problems and maybe help them through a tough time rather than just thinking someone's turned crap. It gives you a lot of information about how your team's performing and how they could improve and do better. And again, those that do really well with their team KPIs, it's like, well, what are they doing that's so good? How are they getting these great results? Can they teach that to the rest of the team? Can we perpetuate these good behaviors? So it's a massive feedback loop.
The surveys as well for staff, like you think about your team, we talked about that earlier with and the culture problem. You want feedback on your team, so you can do, and we teach this to a lot of our members, you can do a monthly connection with your team just to ask them where they're at, which is basically how likely you do refer someone to work here on a scale of 1 to 10. And if they give you a 9 or 10, they're probably pretty happy. And so that gives you a little bit of a temperature check of where things are at. And then every quarter, do a proper staff survey to check in where people are at. That's a feedback loop, and you can use that information to make some changes. Same with your clients, right?
Absolutely.
It's very easy to neglect them. What's the feedback from them? And it might be really simple as just having a cup of coffee or a beer, or turning up at their office or out in the field and having a chat. Or it might be something more formal when you survey them to actually get some real feedback. Or maybe even you're looking at how many reviews you're getting. All that stuff gives you feedback. So you put them to the loop and actually make some changes to improve things as well. So those are definitely areas to look at.
Massively. And again, open-mindedness here is massive, I think, because often we can get some feedback either through our back costing or on our profit and loss or in our KPIs and whether people are hitting them, or in these surveys with the staff, with clients. We can get the feedback, it's right there, but we can dismiss it. For example, unhappy client, we say, yeah, but they were a dick. Easy to brush it off. Or unhappy team member, and you say, yeah, but they don't really fit in here anyway. I think the thing is you have to be really, really open-minded to the feedback you get, especially if it becomes a trend, a rhythm, or a consistent piece of feedback. Be open-minded to it, because it's your business and life are trying to tell you something, and you need to make sure your ears are open.
Yeah, it's like the 3 dicks rule, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If one client's being a dick, probably them, but if there's 3 of them being dicks, it's probably you.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. One bastard in a day, they're a bastard. Second one, you're unlucky. Third one, you're a bastard.
You're the bastard, that's right.
Yeah, remember the feedback here is it could tell you anything. You need to be open-minded to hearing it.
Yeah, and the cool thing about feedback loops is it actually forces you to have some targets or benchmarks, so you know whether you're hitting where you need to, and everything gets better with something to aim at. And I can think of client particular, Lance and Trish, great clients, worked with them for a long time. When we first started, again, they have a plumbing business. We first started working with them, their GP was really low. It was like 23%. And so we set a target, which was, let's aim for 30%. All of a sudden, after 2 months, they're hitting 30%. They're excited. They're like, this is like we've hit the jackpot. I'm like, hey, why don't we change it to 35%? All of a sudden, another 3 months later, we're hitting 35%. Let's change that to 40%. They started hitting 40%. And so the feedback loop is really cool because it stretches you as well. You have some targets with it, and then you use the learnings to reach up to those targets. So that's pretty cool. I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You raise your standards, the feedback loop helps you hit them.
Yeah, exactly. And then I just want to talk about why people don't use feedback loops, because
it seems obvious too, right?
It seems so obvious, but I think the thing is like people don't do this, and I think it's important to address why, because you might be dealing with some of these problems yourself if you're listening. So I think the first one for me is people just don't understand the importance. So you might be hearing us talk right now, and you might be starting to think, oh yeah, that sounds like it might be a thing, but I think you never really understand just how powerful this is until you do it, and so you just need to start. And start creating these feedback loops, being open to the information you learn, and then implementing change off the back of them, because it's so powerful, like across every area of your business and your life. But I think if you don't understand that importance, or it's just not very clear to you, or you haven't tried it yet, then obviously that's going to be a thing standing in the way of you getting started.
It is, and so the importance is important. Funny that.
Yeah,
that's kind of a mouthful, but anyway, the importance is important. And if you don't understand the importance, you just think you're too busy as well. Like it's like, oh, this is a big faff. I've got to actually start measuring some stuff. I've got to actually start looking at some stuff. I'm too busy just getting the jobs done and keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
Well, I hear that, but this is just too important not to do, because the results are very powerful. And if you just focus on getting the jobs done all the time, that's all you'll ever be able to do, because you won't see any improvements.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that whole challenge of focusing on urgent work versus important work. And Stephen Covey talked about this. He's dead just now, but very wise man. I haven't slipped that in for a while.
Yeah,
I
well,
did
it's back.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway,
back.
but the urgent stuff is that stuff that's in your face all the time, just getting those jobs done, dealing with issues. And the important stuff is actually improving your business, and measuring stuff and feedback loops are the important stuff, which takes a bit of proactive effort, but it really makes the difference. So it's actually reframing the importance of that in your mind. And I think the other thing is that this is quite important too. There's a lot of people-pleasing behavior that goes on, and so it can be quite confronting to look at the feedback loop, because it actually gives you some feedback about where things may not be going well in terms of what you're doing, but often what other people are doing. And that can be quite frightening, because we're like, well, we don't want to address that because we don't want to upset people. Once I get this information, I might need to do something with it.
Yeah.
Oh dear, that's frightening, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, if you really want to win, it's good to be kind to people, 100%. We've got to be respectful, but bending over backwards in a way that's not helpful for ourselves, and letting other people walk all over us and not addressing things because we're scared to do it, is not the way that a business owner and a leader operates.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like playing a game without knowing the score.
Yep.
You're just sort of bashing away, which is
or
pointless.
even worse, not wanting to know the score because you're scared of what you have to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, you might find out that you're actually behind by a few points or a lot, and all of that just spells work.
Yeah, and you might need to drop some players on your team or do something with them because they're not up to scratch, and that can be quite frightening. But if you want to have a great business, you've got to put your big boy or big girl pants on and actually deal with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should talk about feedback in all areas of life here.
Yeah, well, it's not just business, is it? I mean, the key thing here is a feedback loop applies to everything, and your health, your wealth, your relationships. So I'm into health and well-being, and it's very easy to take a bunch of multivites, for example, but I get your blood work done because often you're taking a bunch of multivites that you don't need vitamins for, and you're not getting the ones you actually need. And I can see that in the work that I've done. You need different stuff, and so you take stuff that actually you need. That's a feedback loop, and then you see the improvements from there. And a lot of stuff in life is not actually hard numbers, though. Like, it's qualitative. It's like, do you ever reflect and talk about the quality of the relationship you have with your wife or your significant other? Bronwyn and I do that on a weekly basis. Really helpful, because you can actually talk about where things are at and what they don't like or what's frustrating them or what they need or what you need. That's a feedback loop. But if you don't address that, you can never actually make improvements, and you just get caught in that dark place on your inside where resentments and frustration build. And so I think it can apply to every area.
Well, the qualitative stuff is crucial, and sometimes a big thing there is also just being honest with yourself, because sometimes the feedback loops that you have on qualitative parts of your life, that feedback loop is actually just lives within a thought process in your head. And so the only way you can actually get it is to listen to what you truly feel about something. So example for me, a lot of people say, oh, wouldn't it be great to go away for a holiday on a desert island? You can sit on the beach and look at the water and all this. It'll be so beautiful and everything. And it took me a long time to admit to myself that I don't like doing that. I love going to the beach, but I want to go surfing or windsurfing or paddleboarding or something like that. I want to do something. I actually can't stand sitting on the beach. I love being there, but I don't like sitting there. And so, again, being honest with myself about that feedback loop in my head has actually helped me really enjoy a beach holiday a lot more, because I do the stuff I love doing, and I plan to do that when I go, rather than, planning to try to get a tan. It just doesn't light my fire. So
You look good with a tan, bro.
Well, yeah, I think we could both do with a little bit of one, but hey,
Yeah,
that's probably a thing for a different episode.
That's right.
But my point is just like, sometimes the feedback loop lives in your head, and you have to be open to hearing that voice and being honest with yourself as well, so that you do the things that really fill your cup and light your fire. Yeah, listen to those feedback loops, team. Let's land this plane.
Start playing the game of business by keeping score and running the feedback loops in your business. Now, you'll figure out what's broken and what's working, and you'll understand what you need to learn and improve to make your business better. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.